Welcome to today's Explainer. Think of me not just as your host, but kind of like a modern Stoic philosopher. And I'm here to guide you through a masterclass on literally the most fascinating subject in the world, you. Today, we're embarking on a real journey toward true self-mastery, looking deeply into the mirror of human psychology.
So I want you to think about this. Have you ever just completely thrown your weight into a project, right? Only to realize way later that it was a massive waste of time? Or maybe, you suddenly snapped at a colleague, and honestly, you weren't quite sure where that anger even came from. Why do we do this? Why do we self-sabotage? And why are we so incredibly easily blinded by those friendly yet totally toxic masks that other people wear? Okay, let's dive into this.
Our textbook for today's masterclass is Robert Greene's absolute masterpiece, The Laws of Human Nature. We're going to decode the huge, vast complexities of human psychology. And don't worry, we're keeping the terminology really simple, perfectly suited for beginners, but the insights, they are profound. We're going to dive way below the surface to understand the actual roots of human behavior. All right, here's the syllabus for our session together today. We've got the lower versus higher self, the Pericles method, reading hidden masks, listening and empathy, toxic manipulators, and finally, rationality training.
Section 1. The lower versus higher self, the internal battle.
Let's start right at the foundation. The absolute core of our human experience is that we are constantly, and I mean constantly, at war with ourselves. We all possess two completely contrary selves. The lower self, well, that's our default setting. It's the animalistic, reactive, primitive part of us that drags us down into impulsive, emotional reactions, defensive postures, and just petty drama. It always wants the path of least resistance. The higher self, on the other hand, is rational, self-aware, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic. But here's the catch. Because that higher impulse is naturally weaker, it requires immense effort, insight, and constant mindfulness to actually cultivate.
Now, to cultivate that higher self, we have to recognize what Greene calls low-grade irrationality. This is that subtle underlying current of continual moods and feelings. Stuff like our simple desire for pleasure or our urge to avoid pain. And this secretly skews our daily decisions. We genuinely think we're making logical choices, but so often we are just being steered by these low-grade emotional biases completely below our conscious awareness.
Moving on to Section 2, the Pericles method, calm leadership.
So how do we actually overcome this default setting? Well, let's look at the great Athenian statesman Pericles. He was a model of calm leadership. He famously worshipped Athena, the goddess of practical wisdom and rationality. But this wasn't just some religion. It was a psychological tool. He channeled his inner Athena to overcome his own insecurities. He rigorously trained himself never to react in the moment and never, ever to make a decision while under the influence of strong emotion. Athena simply represents that higher, rational power that exists within you right now, just waiting to be activated.
And here is your step-by-step meditative plan to channel your own inner Athena, especially in stressful conflicts or when you feel an emotional outburst coming on. First, recognize the rising pressure and physical tension in your body. Second, physically step back. Seriously, sometimes you literally need to leave the room to curb those impulsive reactions. Third, objectively analyze the trigger. Look at your emotion like it's a specimen under a microscope. And fourth, just wait. Wait for the high-grade impulsive emotions to cool down until that rational voice finally emerges.
Section 3. Reading hidden masks, decoding true intentions.
Okay, once we begin to master our own internal emotions, we can start turning our gaze outward. It is time to stop being blinded by everyday facades. What's really interesting here is how true intentions inevitably leak out. People try so hard to play a role, but their nonverbal cues absolutely betray them. Start practicing this. Look for an extra animated front. Someone smiling a bit too much, or being overly chatty just to distract you. Watch for contradictory cues, like passive-aggressive late arrivals, a subtle eye roll that's quickly hidden, or hand gestures that just don't match the enthusiasm of the words they're saying.
Now here's a highly specific technique for spotting hidden manipulation. It's called the angle approach trick. When you approach someone unexpectedly from an angle, watch their face really closely. Right before they have time to plaster on their affable, friendly mask, you might catch a micro-expression. It's just a brief, 1-second flash of displeasure or tension. But that tiny flash, that is the truest indicator of their hidden feelings toward you.
Section 4. Listening and empathy. Understanding others.
Mastering our own irrationality doesn't just protect us, it actually unlocks our greatest tool for persuasion, and that is deeply understanding others through active empathy. The great Russian writer Anton Chekhov is our anchor here. He survived a deeply abusive childhood by basically using objective empathy. He studied the human animal. By stepping back and understanding the childhood traumas and the flawed logic of toxic people, even his own father, he demythologicked them. He cut them down to human size. He realized that true understanding replaces hatred with objective observation.
So, to practice this kind of empathy in difficult situations, use these active listening micropractices. First, drop your preconceptions and assume total ignorance about the other person. Second, listen not just to their words, but to their feeling tones. That's the physical posture and vocal pitch hiding behind the words. Third, subtly mirror their words back to them. And fourth, really seek to understand their deeply held childhood values. This is literally the secret to persuasive communication. When people feel truly deeply understood, their defensive walls just crumble.
Section 5. Toxic Manipulators. Facing the Dark Side.
But look, empathy does not mean being naive, right? We have to be prepared to face the darker parts of human nature. You will absolutely encounter these toxic types in both business correspondence and your personal life. For example, the envier, they show subtle disappointment at your success. Your strategy? Downplay your achievements around them. Then there's the passive aggressor. They're chronically late or constantly playing the victim. To handle them, you must stay absolutely calm and subtly mirror their behavior back to them without an ounce of anger. And the aggressor, they use charm to entrap you. Your only real defense is to recognize their pattern early and mentally disengage. When facing any toxic person, you need an action plan to create emotional distance and protect yourself without getting dragged into their drama. First, maintain your inner independence. Do not let their chaos become your reality. Second, focus entirely on their actions and ultimate goals. Completely ignore their emotional cover stories. Third, demythologize them. See their bluster for what it really is, a mask for deep insecurity. And finally, encourage them to talk more. The more they talk, the more deception cues they'll leak.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is this. When you are targeted by a manipulator, or when you inevitably make a mistake and fall for their tricks, do not get angry. Don't get bitter. Accept your limits. Turn that mistake into a profound lesson for your own growth. Study their behavior and analyze your own reaction, like a scientist studying a specimen. Every single conflict is just an opportunity to grow your objective understanding of human nature.
And finally, Section 6. Rationality Training. Building the Muscle. We've covered a ton of ground, but you have to remember that rationality is not a switch you just flip. It's a muscle, and you have to build it every single day. Here's your daily workout regimen to combat those cognitive biases. First, keep a daily journal. Be ruthless about tracking your emotional triggers so you can find the root of your sudden anger or anxiety. Second, actively practice increasing your reaction time to emails or comments. Just sleep on it. Third, actively seek out opposing perspectives to break out of your groupthink bubbles. And finally, constantly analyze how you respond under stress, because that, my friends, is exactly when your mask slips. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate goal of our masterclass. The ancient Greeks used this amazing metaphor of the horse and the rider. The horse is our wild, emotional, powerful energy. The rider is our thinking, rational self. True rationality is not about killing the horse or becoming some emotionless robot, not at all. It's about the rider holding the reins, balancing skepticism with profound curiosity, and channeling that raw emotional power toward productive goals. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche noted, behind our feelings stand judgments and evaluations. Feelings are incredible indicators, for sure, but they are not final facts. Mastering yourself means taking the time to pause and investigate the hidden judgments that create your feelings in the first place. Practicing this simply trains an objective view of your own emotions. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to carry with you as you step back into the world today. Look inward and be brutally honest with yourself. What mask did you put on this morning to face your colleagues and your friends? And when the pressure inevitably rises today, which version of you is going to be holding the reins? Is it going to be your impulsive lower self or your rational, empathetic higher self? The choice and the mastery is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.